Welcome to Legends to Leaders, the podcast dedicated to bringing the wisdom of perioperative legends to the fresh perspectives of newly promoted directors of surgical services. Today, we're honored to welcome a true trailblazer in ambulatory and perioperative excellence, Robin Menefee. Robin will be discussing EQ, self-awareness in leadership decisions. 2 decades of dynamic leadership in perioperative services. She's been over multi-site ambulatory surgery centers in interim and perm at prestigious systems, including Sutter Health, where she was regional director of Palo Alto Medical Foundation, overseeing 8 ambulatory surgery centers in the Bay Area. Robin has received multiple CASA awards for ASC excellence. She has been part of Newsweek's Best ASC in the Nation recognition and led AORN's Best Innovative Quality Project for her PIT crew lean turnover initiative that slashed times to 15 minutes. Robin, welcome to Legends to Leaders. It's an absolute privilege to have you here sharing your hard-earned wisdom with the next generation of perioperative leaders.
Thank you so much, Josiah. I am very, very happy to be here and looking forward to hopefully share some information, some tips, some tools that help people along the way. Thank you for having me.
Diving in. Robin, when a clinician steps into her first director of perioperative services role, his or her first role, what blind spots around emotional intelligence tend to surface first and why?
It has been my experience that the initial blind spot for all new leaders, specifically though, I've seen it in directors, is that transition from kind of being everybody's favorite person to being able to separate emotion from the work. So a lot of managers fall into the habit of wanting to be liked, and they work really well with the staff because, you know, they want the staff to like them, so they do things to get close to them and things like that. And that can help to create a really beautiful working relationship. But it's a different level and it's a different expectation for the job, for the role when you are the director. So the blind spot that I have seen and even experienced myself personally is when you make that transition from manager to director. You have to learn how to still care for people, still care, but also being able to draw that hard line when it needs to be drawn, and understand that that has nothing to do with how you feel about a specific individual or person at all. It's not personal. It literally is about the job. That was one of the things I wish someone had pointed out to me, because it's learning that on your own, figuring that out on your own, it can be really difficult. So I wish someone had told me that before I became a director.
Sounds like there's a difference between caring and wanting to be liked. It's time to disconnect those two things when you take on a leadership role.
Exactly. The most effective leaders I've worked with and I've seen know the difference. So, and it's not that you want to be the troll who lives under the bridge, right? It doesn't want to be that bad, but you do want to be a person that is respected. And how you get that respect is to be consistent. So even when you draw the hard line, people want and expect boundaries. So when you draw the hard line, as long as you're consistent with that hard line, even if people don't like it, they will respect it, because, you know, that's what she did over there and that's what she did over there. It's the same. So as long as they don't feel like, you know, there's favoritism going on or you're treating someone different, they don't have to like the decision, right? But what I have learned is that people will respect the role, and they will respect the fact that you are doing your job and you're doing it fairly.
Reminds me of an umpire in baseball. The umpire calls it off the black on the inside part of the plate, but calls it consistently. That's the sign of a good umpire, as opposed to the inconsistency. That's sort of the cardinal sin for umping.
That is absolutely correct. People notice inconsistencies. And that is where you first start. If you're going to lose power in your role, it's there. Because it is amazing the things that your staff will recall that you don't. And trust me when I tell you, they are watching you. Whether you see them looking or not, they see what you do. And it really is that general rule of don't tell us what to do. We're going to do what we see you doing, right? It's the consistency.
So the operating room is a intense environment. There's a lot that goes on every day. What are the times or the instances in which a new leader's EQ will be tested? And when they are at risk of falling short, what are the signs that you might pick up on early?
Well, when the stakes are high and people are getting excited, they're maybe, I don't know if it's between a physician and another physician, a physician and a staff member, a physician and a patient. But that leader kind of gets called in to deal with that. The first thing that you should remember to do is to maintain a calm head, right? So it never helps to throw oxygen on a fire, basically. Like you don't want to come in there and be the person who's fanning the flames. The leader should be the calm head in the storm. And when I say that, I do want to be careful to say, because I do think a lot of new leaders make the mistake of thinking you have to be the problem solver. You don't. You don't. But you do need to be the person who de escalates and helps people to take a step back, to breathe for a second, and then let's talk calmly about what it is we need to do. And honestly, if you're in a conversation with someone who just is too ramped up to be able to hear, we're all human, it happens. Step away. Step away. Ask that person to step away and deal with some, let calmer heads prevail, where you can start working things out. Because what's needed, if there is a hot ticket situation going on, is a calm conversation, or for you to have a calm moment to make a decision to say, this is how we're moving forward. But it's never good to make a snap judgment. Like you need to stop and think. And most important, I almost forgot, and this is huge, make sure you get all the information that you can. Because sometimes there's one person coming at you, and this is a very important point for all people to understand when you're dealing with a tense situation, is people are not necessarily lying to you when they're giving you their side. They're just giving you their side. That's how they see it, right? So you have to remember when you are stepping in to help out that you've got to get more than one perspective. That one perspective may have been 100% right, maybe, but there might be another person that was standing off to the side who saw it too and saw it differently. And maybe they give you that little extra nugget that you're like, that's the piece that was missing. Now I have that, and now I can solve this. But that is really important, to get as many people as you can that were involved in that, calm heads, of course, to help you to come together, either come together and with a conclusion, or to help you be able to formulate a conclusion. But it's really important to remain calm and gather as much information as possible.
Great. So you're brought in to de-escalate, if not problem solve immediately. That brings up time and place. In other words, I
Yes.
might need to solve this at a later time in 15 minutes when I get both sides, or as long as it takes. And then place, I might need to do it in a different venue. It might need to happen outside of this operating room or away from the patient who might be, witnessing. How do you move time and place? Tell me a little bit about how you might verbally, what kind of tricks or tools you might use to move it time and place.
In a situation like that, it's always important to be very open and honest with people right there, because people will start they'll start catastrophizing, what is going to happen next. So it's good to let them know, okay, this thing just happened. We are going to have to talk about it. Let's finish. Let's say it is a patient care situation, finish taking care of the patient, and then we will all meet in my office or wherever it is to talk about it. And I think it is really important when that conversation happens to help everybody to understand this is a fact-finding conversation. This is not about discipline. at all. This is a fact. This is a fact-finding conversation. The reason that that is important is because you want people to feel safe. And you don't go into a whole big conversation about that, especially if a patient is involved or something like that. But when you get them all together in that room, that is where you need to lead. And you need to make sure you do all the things. You are sitting down, they are sitting down. There's no sense of the power structure, and I'm talking to the director and I need to be nervous. Is what you want is for people to feel really safe and to understand that you understand that human beings make mistakes. And the goal here is to understand, where do we go off the rails so we can fix it. If we owe the patient an apology, we owe our staff member, our coworker, an apology, we can do that. But we need honesty, truth, transparency. And then, you just help people, you support people through it. And I got to be honest with you, that doesn't mean that sometimes people don't end up with a discipline. But I think when they know that they've been heard, they've been understood, and this is not about trying to get you on the path to being terminated, but it is more about trying to help people to understand, like, sometimes things happen. I can't think of a time that I've had those kind of meetings where someone actually has been disciplined. I mean, but it could happen. The point is, I definitely felt that it's really important that people feel like they're heard and that they're safe to be heard. Because we can do a better job taking care of our patients if our employees feel very comfortable coming forward and saying, hey, this is something that happened. It happened to me, and I ended up making this mistake, and someone was harmed. That's a huge nugget. And you want to thank that person that brings that forward, even if it ended up in harm. Like, you want to thank that person for being brave enough to bring that forward. So transparency, open and honest transparency, and a supportive environment, so that they know, like, I care about you as a person as well.
You likely have been promoted because of your good EQ. That's certainly probably foundational in why the promotion occurred. But maybe now the new director of perioperative services wants to work on himself or herself and wants to know where her strengths and triggers and maybe blind spots are. Are there any practical tools or reflection habits that you would recommend that could help the newly promoted director know where they might be able to continue to grow?
Well, that is a great question. And yes, I think first you must know thyself, right? It is so true. You have to know, because we're all human. Everybody's got the triggers, everybody's got that thing that, like, oh my God. When you know that that is who you are, you pick whatever that thing is, right? You pick that thing and you work on it. For me personally, I got a life coach. There were certain things that were kind of, I was like, I have a real problem dealing with da 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 da. And I got a life coach, and that life coach was amazing. The other thing that helped me was, I realized, to be quite frank, I realized that I was very judgmental about myself and about others, right? So I was like, wow, that is not a nice quality. And I started to work on that, right, with the coach. I'm like, why am I like this? Why am I so judgmental? And it really helped me to realize, like, when it was happening, like when somebody is talking to me and in my head, I'm going through all these things, to not say the thing that was going through my head, right? That's the most important thing. Keep that to yourself. But then also, like, reflect later on, why did I go down that path when I heard that? Because when you really, and it made me a better person, because then I realized, like, you know what, you're it's almost it's almost like it's a reflection of yourself. So when you start being kinder to yourself, you're able to be kinder to others. And that's what helped build me to be a better leader, a better person all the way around. And then you realize, like, yeah, nobody's perfect. And this person is coming to you as imperfect as you are. And they're letting you know what happened. And, you give them the space to be who they are, and then help them move forward. That's what my coach did for me. And that's what I ended up doing for the people who reported to me. And that's kind of a beautiful circle right there, because we all have something, right? And you don't have to say what that something is, but when you know it, it's something that gives you something to work on.
So your life coach, did you find that person on LinkedIn? Was it through your institution, your employer. Tell us a little bit about if you want to take the bait and get an executive coach, a professional mentor, a life coach. Where do you start?
So we had actually executive coaches at Sutter Health, which was amazing. Um, and I actually did work with an executive coach at Sutter Health. She was great. And I asked my leader for that, and she was able to get that for me. But I also found an executive coach through, like you said, through LinkedIn. She had an ad there, and to be fair, I did know her. I knew her from something else, but I knew she had started her life coaching business. But I saw her ad on LinkedIn, and I reached out to her, and she's been amazing. It is so wonderful, and it's wonderful to have a coach because everybody who's at the top of their game, right? You get to the director level, you're at the top of the game. Everybody at the top of the game, every professional athlete, profession in any profession, right? Any professional uses a coach. There is that person in their life, their mentor, that person who helps them, like, get like they're at 98%, and that person helps them to get that last 2% and then to maintain it. And so I think it's really, really important to have that uninvolved person. So, not someone you work with, not your boss, not your spouse or whoever, but someone outside of that whole scenario who can just look at it clean, calm, and say to you, okay, here's where you need to move with that. And it helps you like get rid of some of the baggage that we all pick up along the way, right? And it helps you to be, better and to show up in a better space and a better headspace.
Absolutely. We have the phrase Tiger Woods has a swing coach. Best golfer of all time has a swing coach. That's really good advice.
Yes.
So you're being kind to yourself, which means that you're forgiving yourself of your own sins, but at the same time you're trying to get the most out of your team. How does emotional self-awareness, emotional intelligence and self-awareness change the way that you give feedback when you need to get stronger performance out of your team?
Oh my God, I love that question. So, what that does is like going back to like my last answer. Once you have embraced yourself and you love yourself in a way that makes you feel empowered, it helps you in your approach to other people, because you start looking at people like, how would I want someone to address me if I had to tell them about this? So especially when you're having those difficult conversations, and when I say difficult, I don't mean a discipline, but maybe a change. A lot of people don't like change. I got it down, I know how to do it, and now here you come telling me to do it different. And so how do you sell that change, right? And I think it's really important for everybody to kind of stop before you have that meeting and think, okay, who are my stakeholders here and what's my end goal? So your end goal is to get them to embrace the change, right? And that may not happen in one meeting. I think you need to start by knowing that, right? That first meeting may end feeling a little broken. People may need a minute to think about this. But in the end, what I realize is everybody wants to get something out of a transaction. And when I first considered that, it sounded a little almost cold, right? Like, oh, everybody, it's like, are all relationships transactional? They kind of are. They kind of are, but not with that negative like pallor on it. It's meaning people want to feel good about what they're doing, and you go to work and you want to make sure that there's a good product. You're putting out something good for people. So when, the boss comes along and says, hey, I want to make this change and this is why I want to make it, people are kind of like, what's in it for me? Whether they say it or not, they're thinking, what's in it for me? Right. So you have to, I used to think I would have to sell it in a way that they got something out of it. But instead, what I started doing was saying, listen, I know that if we make this change, this is how it's going to impact your life, maybe to the negative. But can we talk about what may be positive about it? And I don't tell them what's positive. I have them tell me what's positive. And at first, sometimes you kind of get the, well, nothing. But I'm like, there has to be something positive. And you know what? And sit in the uncomfortableness of that moment. Be willing to sit in the uncomfortableness, because people will, just like they're looking at the clock and they're waiting for the meeting to end, and let that happen. Let that happen. And you can probe a couple of times, like, is there anybody who's coming up with anything? Toss out a couple of words that may get them excited. But eventually somebody will speak, right? Somebody will speak up and say, well, maybe there's this. That's all you need. That is the crack that you need, the crack of sunlight. Because then after that, it's kind of, now it's not coming from the boss anymore. It's coming from a peer who can see like something good about it. And that always happens. You do have to wait. You do have to wait sometimes, for people to think it through, to get over, I don't want to change, and all the things that are going on in their head. It's like, well, this one piece might be decent. And then it's kind of funny, because once you get that one person to speak up, it's like they all kind of get on the train eventually. And everybody kind of, well, yeah, I guess that's kind of true. And like little by little, you let them talk it out, because in the end, that's what you want, right? You want them to see what's in it for them. And if they figure it out, you're like, perfect. Because it doesn't have to be the way I want it to be. It can be the way you want it to be, as long as we're meeting the end goal that we need. And people love that.
So let's turn our attention to the C-suite. Why does investing in the EQ, whether it's paying for an executive coach or just different investments in emotional intelligence, why does it make bottom line sense for an organization?
Oh my gosh. It makes sense because there is a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. That is so true. If you have a negative culture that is comprised of several people with lower EQs, and just kind of and some of us just are not aware, and that's not a slight to anybody, it's just you don't know what you don't know, right? So once you become aware of EQ and why it's relevant, why it's important, people start behaving differently. They communicate with each other differently. They communicate with a goal. So again, it's transactional, but you speak to people, and it's not about the kind of culture that takes teams down, where people get together and it's gossiping and it's like backbiting and that kind of thing. But instead, it's like people who are looking at, hey, you know what? I actually enjoy this job, and there's a lot of things about it I like, and I want it to be a better place. And I'm talking to someone who might be able to help me move these kind of things forward. So I want to have that kind of conversation with them, and to create the building blocks to maybe, make this thing better for all of us. You start creating an environment of people who think that way. And that's what you want, right? You want like that synergy and everybody working together, because we've all been in an environment where you have that one person who is cancerous. And isn't it amazing how quickly that attitude spreads? But when there's EQ there, and people are learning to communicate in a different way, and they're caring about themselves more, and when you care about yourself more, you care about others more, all of that is happening. That one person, because that one person is everywhere, but that one person usually, like, they kind of go, well, nobody's doing this with me anymore. So they either stop or they leave. But either way, it works out better. So I think that is a huge and very important investment, to get someone in to help everybody kind of get on the same page and communicate in a way that that builds the team.
Talk a little bit about talent acquisition. So imagine you're a TA leader. How does a potential director of surgical services candidate and their emotional intelligence, how should that be questioned or tested for in an interview process?
Oh, I think that you should ask them how they've dealt with a difficult situation. And ask them for specifics. Like, I want to know what the situation was, who were the roles that were involved, and how did you personally affect positive change in that scenario? Because I think that will tell you a lot about how that person thinks. And even if the story is actually not a great story, like they finish it and you're kind of like, oh, okay. Like maybe you're like a little scrunchy after the story. If they kind of end it with, well, that is literally what happened, but this is what I learned from that. Huge, huge. So, moving forward, so that's what I did that, wasn't so great. I mean, it worked out, but maybe I didn't do it the best way. But this is what I learned from that. That's a person I would definitely look into, because that is like the highest sign of intelligence to me, is that you did the human thing, you made the mistake, you did the stumble, but you learned from it. You were able to reflect and learn from it. That person can take you to the moon and back, right? Because this is a person who gets it. Someone who's kind of stuck in their way of seeing it, and even if they told you like the crunchy story and they didn't get that story was crunchy.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Before we wrap up, was there a question that I neglected to ask that you think is relevant to a new director of perioperative services and as they're thinking about emotional intelligence?
I don't think there's a question that you forgot to ask, but I did want to add to like that first one when I talked about people wanting to be liked, because I do think that is that's like a really difficult transition for people. It sounds like it's not a big deal, but I've really seen people struggle with that, right? So they become like yes people and they want to please everybody. And it's really important when you become a director to make sure that when you say but you do what you say. You are consistent, you are a person with integrity, you're honest and true. So when you are yesing everybody because you're trying to please everybody, you are going to burn out, and quickly. So it is really, really important to, again, take care of yourself, love yourself, honor yourself, and understand that sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to explain why it's no, it's just no.
Well, that's terrific, Robin. Here's what we heard today. A few things. We heard the value of enlisting an objective third party to help us with our blind spots in emotional intelligence. In Robin's case, it was a life coach. The need for consistency, the importance of being kind to yourself. And I love the quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to thank Robin Menefee for her insights on self-awareness and leadership decisions for the new director of perioperative services. Hopefully there are some insights here that you can take into your practice. Until next time, keep up the great work.